I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Julie.
Mr. Campion? Here. Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
Mr. Tinkin?
Here.
Mr. Borbeck? Absent. Mayor Mechanico? Absent. And Councilwoman King, as Council President, will be presiding over our meeting.
The Open Public Meetings Act Statement of Compliance. Pursuant to the requirements of the New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice filed in the office of the Borough Clerk, posted on the Borough website, and on the bulletin board in the municipal building, published as a legal notice in the Coast Star newspaper and mailed to those requesting notice and providing payment in accordance with borough policy. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Okay, now we have some meeting minutes that we have to...
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, take a vote. Roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Approval of minutes. The first is September 24th, 2012, the executive session. And if I'm not mistaken, there's only two of us that can approve that, I think.
Correct.
Okay. Ready whenever you are, John.
We need a motion and a second.
Motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm out of order. Mr. Campion?
Abstain.
Mr. O'Brien?
Abstain.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Abstain.
Councilwoman King?
Yes.
Thank you.
September 24th, 2012, regular session. Can I have a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Campion?
Abstain.
Mr. O'Brien?
Abstain.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Abstain.
Councilwoman King?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next is October the 9th, 2012, executive and regular session. Motion and second.
Make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion?
Abstain.
Mr. O'Brien?
Abstain.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Abstain.
Council President King?
Yes. Next is October 22nd, 2012, regular meeting.
Make
Need a
that
motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Campion?
Abstain.
Mr. O'Brien?
Abstain.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Abstain.
Council President King?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And lastly, July 27th, 2015, regular session.
Make the motion. I'll second.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Council President King?
Yes. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a presentation this evening from our Planning Board Chairman, Mr. Richard Diver, regarding ordinance number 2014-05. Rich, want to come forward?
Thank you.
You know you haven't been here in a while.
You know, you should have asked me on a couple of those minutes. I think I was here.
Yeah.
Me too.
The presentation we want to make tonight, Joe, have you distributed? had submitted an ordinance to the council concerning flood zones. And as everyone knows, under FEMA rules now, you're able to get an extra 3 feet, especially on your lower level, to allow for if you have like an open space, you can actually put in the vents and the water would go through, like a breakthrough or a breakaway sort of foundation is what you can consider. But it would have been like a crawl space in these homes. And what occurred last year when we submitted the ordinance, it was denied by the council to maximize that at 37 feet in order to achieve a maximum 3-foot separation of finished floor from the applicable base flood elevation. That wording was rejected by the council, and unfortunately, a person came before us on the planning board as well as you on the council, and the council, didn't put this language in, and this individual, I quite frankly, to be blunt, I think took advantage of us in our town. If you've driven down Shore Road and you've seen this home, from the bottom floor, the actual bottom floor, to the second story, and I don't mean it's really a 3-story house, but if you look on that first story, those pillars are 13 feet high, and it's allowable the way this ordinance reads now. You could end that. Someone who comes in today and submits a plan could do exactly what she did. It's totally out of character with our town. It really, really is an eyesore, and to the neighbors. I mean, people's shade is being affected, which is going to hurt them on heat. People's sun is being affected, which is going to hurt them on air conditioning, their surrounding neighbors. It's something that, let's all admit we committed an error, and let's correct it, is what I would say. And if you look at the actual home itself, she made this a living space on the first floor. Now this person's coming back saying, I don't have enough money to enclose the first floor. Give me a CO. Well, we're not going to agree to that on the plan. If you can afford to put an elevator in your house in Spring Lake Heights, you can afford to enclose the first floor. That's just proper, and we should do that because not only is it safer for us, it actually has to be safer for her, as far as that's concerned. So I would ask, and I believe you received a letter from us to insert this language into the, and it would be an amendment to the ordinance. So I assume we have to have a public hearing take place for that. But I respectfully ask the council to please insert this language. It would alleviate that problem. Most people think of a half-story as an attic. But if you've got a good architect who knows how to slope a roof, add some gables, open up floor space for stairs, a half-story could become a living space based upon how the architect designs it. Enough gables and enough openings and sloping roofs, and you can make a space, and that's exactly what they did. So we really need to address this. And I respectfully ask that you please insert this language back into the ordinance.
How many houses are actually in the zone that can build up to 37 feet?
It's not many.
I would probably guess off the top of my head about 30 to 40 homes.
Which is, along that line, that's significant.
And so what you're saying is that they can still build the 37 feet provided that the first story only has this 3-foot separation? Like I'm just wondering why it's a big deal that they built up to 37 feet and what they got in.
Well, here's the example where that language is detrimental to what the planning board's recommendation was. If we take a quick look, I can walk you through the sketch. And this is pretty exemplary for the whole area. The elevations are pretty consistent throughout Shore Road, as you know, on both sides. The elevations are consistent. The flood elevations are consistent in those areas. The old flood elevation was elevation 8. The curb lines along Shore Road are around elevation 7. The new flood elevation, elevation 10. Okay, so the original ordinance was crafted. We raised our height 2 feet to allow for that increase in the change in flood. Now FEMA gives you a maximum insurance benefit of 3 feet above flood. That's where we got this 37 feet from, 32 to 37.
Because that would give the same homeowners the ability to go 3 feet above flood.
Yes, so you get your maximum insurance benefit, you wouldn't be impacted by the raising of the flood. However, you're only allowed to go to 37 to get that 3 feet. So in this case, this house would only have to go, as they finished for it, to 1577, not 1992, which is actually 4.15 feet higher than it actually needs to be. And the whole idea is that, is so the person can gain that usable space on that lower level. That's the whole idea that people, solicit the council to get rid of that language. And that's how we have this structure, which by definition is a 2.5-story house, because more than 40% of the quote-unquote half-story has less than 5 foot of headroom. But looking at it, it doesn't really look like a 2.5-story house, does it?
Joe, can I ask you, if they're giving you an allowance for flood, how could you make it a usable space? Because the whole reason would be that it's kind of throwaway space if it floods, right? So if they're making it usable, doesn't that negate the purpose of a flood?
You don't have any electrical, any mechanicals, it needs the flood construction, breakaway walls. It's not habitable.
So that's the determinant if it's habitable and can be used for everyday use.
As
So
long
what
as
is
they-
it?
As long as they make the walls so they break away, they can say it's a storage area, but you can't police what people are going to do.
Sure. I was just curious what the,
I think that's a good point, that you can't police what people are going to do. And no, my point is that, I mean, just you look at Manasquan and how some of those houses are just concrete block up until the first story, and that just looks horrible. This looks nice. I mean, it's a garage, it's got windows. I don't see that we need to, I mean, personally, I just think it's, we're trying to solve a problem that really isn't a problem.
No.
But, I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, I'd rather have a bottom story that looks like this, give them the maximal ability to get up above the floodwaters and make it look nice. And I think that's what they've done here.
could you not do that with 10 feet? Could you not do that with what's on here? It's not like this is saying it has to be open pillars. I mean, you could still.
No, but if you took it down 4 feet, you still have a whole lot of exposed concrete, as opposed to something that looks nice. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel that people, given the opportunity, they'll build something that looks like this, as opposed to 7 feet of
But
exposed
to address
concrete.
that concern, once a property is built, and as this property is, they graded it up, you can actually correct the grading to also hide concrete in where she is right now, which I'm sure is what they're going to do. But the fact still remains, that first floor is 13 feet high. It did not need to be that high. This house could have been 4 feet lower and far more in character with the houses around it. And it's a question of what, in the long term, do you want the town to look like? Do you want to have 40 homes over here that look like behemoths next to ranches? Or, regular two-story homes? So, it's a question of how you want the area to look, how it fits into the master plan. This really doesn't fit into a master plan that we have here, for the town.
Yeah,
As far as that's concerned.
Excuse me, I'd like to weigh in as the neighbor to this property, may I?
You have to wait
You gotta wait for the
Yeah.
public hearing. Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're going to vote on it before you get a chance to speak, so.
We're going to have a public comment.
Very shortly.
That you can
Okay.
address, yes.
All right, that's it.
Thanks, Rich.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Now, Joe, I have a question. Right now, this is the only house that we have over there.
Correct.
But obviously, if we don't change this ordinance within a very quick time, we could possibly have
Time
other
of the
people.
essence.
Time is of the essence, okay. And do we have, that you know of, any other people over there that are interested in redoing their homes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, thanks.
But not for this degree.
Well, we don't know.
Know that.
We
You can't
don't know.
guarantee that.
We have no idea. Okay, so Gary, can we introduce the ordinance tonight, or do we have to wait until the next meeting?
Well, I think you need to know exactly what you want the ordinance to say, and I don't know if you're ready to do that.
I have the wording.
We have a draft.
Have you seen
The
it?
draft is in here.
You can amend it with that.
Can we do that?
I don't see why not.
Okay. Yep, yes,
I'll second it.
okay.
I think you're gonna
Introduce.
introduce.
Yeah, we want to introduce it, but we want to get
When
it
you do the
going.
ordinance introductions, you already have one, you could do them both at the same time.
Okay. So you want us to put it together? Down on number 11?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
So what would that be,
Yeah.
2015-8?
Will that, yeah,
Yes.
will that be 08, Janine?
Yes.
Good. And then this gentleman can make public comment in the public comment section because it's on the
Correct.
agenda, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Good.
All right, now, we don't have any scheduled public hearings. There's nothing for tonight. So the next item is our public comment section on anything that's on the agenda.
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
So you can come up and comment. Give your name and your address, please.
Joe Florentino at 710 Shore Road, Spring Lake Heights. I live in a home directly east of this property. And I can tell you just a couple of things about this. I'm really going to encourage you to pass this ordinance. I mean, living next to this, her finished first floor is higher than the roof line of my house. I mean, it's so out of character. I've been a builder and developer for many years. I've been before your zoning boards, your planning boards. They were always difficult and tough and really held tight to the regulations. And I would encourage you to continue to do that. Have this passed so that this doesn't go on any longer. I mean, this house could have been, or should have been, if you were that grade on that property, I remember I lived there, it was about 9 feet. So flood elevation, the FEMA elevation is a 10. They want you to get the maximum benefit, 13. House should have been 4 feet out of the ground. Now it's up at an elevation, finished first floor is 20 feet. Am I correct? 1992. 1992, right, almost 20 feet. I mean, from a neighbor's perspective, this is so out of character, it looks, ridiculous. I mean, plus they're building with pilings. You can like the pilings or not, but I've been building my whole life. Pilings are used in a velocity zone, in a FEMA V zone, am I correct? So that the water, wave action can come in and then go back out. You don't use pilings in an A10 zone, especially when you only have to be up a foot to get out of the flood zone. So I was at my house during both of the major storms, Irene and Sandy, never had a drop of water in my house, and my finished first floor is at 12. So just to give you an idea of how far they took it. So if they don't close that bottom in, apparently they don't want to close that in anymore now. Well, I watched them build and frame the house next door. I mind my own business. It's their property. They pay for it. They can do what they want. It's within the law. But they're supposed to finish their first floor. There was never an intention to do that because when you were framing, you would have framed it at that particular time. When you were sheathing, you would have sheathed it at that particular time. There was no intention whatsoever. I can tell you as a builder that they're not going to finish their first floor. So I would encourage you. I know what's done is done already. They slipped through. There's not anything you can do about that, but to impose the regulation on the maximum 3 foot and to not let them get away with not finishing that first floor. If they finish it, they put some windows in, some garage doors. It will look out of place, but not that out of place. Yeah, with the third floor, what they're going to do up there, I don't know, but you've got dormers coming out the back and everything else. I mean, to me, it certainly looks like it's living space. Whether it is or not, I can't tell, but from just by eye, that's what it looks like to me. So, this neighbor, I know this isn't part of it, but I'm just going to put this on the record. This neighbor also, when she installed the pool, which happened right before Sandy, and her backyard, her property's in a flood zone, bought in fill or either bought in fill or didn't remove the fill from the flood, instead built up the pool level about 3 or 4 feet in the backyard. And when Sandy came, the water came in, had nowhere to go, so naturally went to her house and went to my backyard and ruined the side of my pool. Water got behind it and one of the walls caved in. So this is who you're dealing with over there. My understanding, she's never closed out the pool permit. So it's another thing that she needs to drop that pool elevation. But I know that's not on you. I'll talk to the building inspector for that. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I would just like to add one comment.
State your name and address.
Oh, I should. 1019 Drive. You can still find it. Having sat on the council, having sat on the planning board now for 10 years, I can't believe I'm up there 10 years, but it's often easy to get swayed by someone who comes in and gives us a dog and pony show or whatever. And I would just respectfully ask, and I know what it's like to sit up there and you want to help people. I mean, I felt the same way. You always want to help people. But I think what we need to do, whether it's the planning board, whether it's the council, if someone comes in with that issue or an issue that is extreme in some sort of nature, that we take their information and then instead of acting right away, if the council meets every 2 weeks, 2 weeks is not going to hurt anything. And then the council could then go back, the council representative to the planning board, or whoever it is, the mayor who sits on the planning board as well, could go back to the planning board or go right to the town engineer, Mr. May, and ask the questions that are necessary. Because we could have, this may have been able to be prevented. And hopefully, you'll vote tonight to make sure that we don't do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have one? John?
Yes, John Tashman, Process Court, Atlantic. I want to speak in support of the planning board's recommendation to change the wording. The house, Tom, it may look nice in a photo. It's probably, I'm sure it's brand new, it's going to be nice, but it's just too big. It's out of character with the neighborhood. I think it was mentioned at the planning board, if I'm not wrong, Rich, that somebody driving in from Seagirt wanted to know who was building a hotel on Shore Road. It's just too big, and you shouldn't really be encouraging that kind of thing. So to change a few words, the people, anybody building would still get the benefits of their insurance, and you wouldn't have a monstrous building. So support what Rich and Mr. May have to say.
Thanks. Does anyone else have anything? Okay, if not, I need a motion and a second to close the public comment section.
Make a motion.
Second.
Janine, roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
I'm closing it.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Council President King?
Yes.
I just, we could just stop me for 1 moment, I'm having an issue here.
Okay.
Just want to stop them.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you're up next anyway. At this point of the meeting, we have a discussion item, and Janine is going to address the council and those in attendance at the meeting.
Thank you. I would just like to take a few minutes of council's time to talk about our code book. And this is, I know, something we've discussed periodically with regard to our book and the need for updates. As the clerk, as the clerk and the assistance of the advice of the attorney, I am obligated, or should be on top of, getting the code book up to speed and keeping it that way as we adopt ordinances. And our last update, I want to say, was 2007. And since then, there was a project started and a ordinance adopted allotting some money back to, in 2008. At that time, we did a special appropriation ordinance, we did resolutions, we actually did a resolution awarding a contract to Coded Systems located right here in Spring Lake Heights. And they did start the project with Teresa Casagreen, who was the clerk at the time, and President Fetto. And over time, it kind of just, the process got slowed down a bit. Teresa no longer was here. We had since had a couple of different clerks since then. And it kind of slowly dwindled down to nothing being done. in speaking today, Jay let me know that we have $18,391 for codification. We actually had a contract and awarded and signed a contract with Coded Citizens back then. I believe the amount was $19,000 at that point. So obviously we made a payment to them with regard to that. So now I guess my question to you all would be, I would like to move forward, pick the project back up again, get started. They have, as of today, gave me an estimate to bring us up to speed through May of 2015 would require an additional $5,900. I don't know, July of this year, thank you. I don't know that we have that to do. We do have the 18 plus still there that at this point, if we cannot bring us up to speed and cannot find the 5,900 at this point in time, to at least what is there to get us to that point, whatever, how far that will take us. I believe even this, if we were only able to use the, I mean, as you can see on the back page, they talk about what the cost would have been. They're giving us this discount, bringing us down to the $5,900 to bring us current. So basically, I'm just asking for the go-ahead, if we need time to think about it, to speak with them based on what we do have to use funding financially, how far that will take us, and at least get us to that point.
When you say update the code book, you just for the people who aren't familiar with it, what does it entail? What are we doing here? So
Each year when we adopt ordinances, they become our law. And they are then put into print, I'll say, into a book that are any of our police officers, our court and the prosecutor and the judge use that book. We in the clerk's office use it. Anyone, the public comes in and looks to see what our codes are with regard to land use that we were just talking about tonight. It's kind of our Bible. It's our law. And if we don't have it current, then it's very difficult for all the departments to do their job. So it's very important that continuously that book is updated, and unfortunately we've kind of laxed in that area over the past several years.
And this would this would update both the printed version and the online version?
Correct. Correct.
If you weren't aware, we do actually have a searchable online version of our code book that can be reached through the Borough website. So, I mean, that's one of the things that Coded Systems provides for us.
At that point in time, I know there was a lot of work. I can recall when I was working in the office, we all did, all the departments, and I, as the registrar, did research of other towns and what their fees were, and we tried to bring the borough up to equal what other towns were surrounding. And over this time, we've lost money. I would imagine, probably in particular with the police department and our penalties, that we are kind of low in comparison to surrounding towns. So we are losing money actually by not doing it.
Well, I can only tell you that Ronald Sage, who was our prosecutor, has spoken to me a couple of different times since I'm in charge of the police department, and he asked me if there's anything that we can do to update our fees, because we're so far behind with other towns. And since Ron's been around in this type of capacity as a prosecutor for other towns, and still does other towns besides ours, he feels that it's almost laughable as to what we charge for things. And I know I had referred him to a conversation with our borough attorney, Gary McLean, and I know they talked, and he would like to see some movement in regards to this as well. And I'm sure that Joe May would like to see some movement, just for, you know,
Our
permits.
zoning permit, I mean, we have a zoning permit and we charge $10, which, when you're reviewing for a fence install is one thing, but Joe can be spending, you know, an hour and a half reviewing somebody's plans where they want to do a new construction, and we're charging $10.
And most towns charge 50.
I thought we had agreement with this a couple months back. I know Gary recommended that we get on this. What do we?
We've discussed it, no one's actually authorized to move forward. I think the last time we discussed it, there was a request that someone go back to code systems to actually get what the number would be now.
Okay, so this number is 5,900?
In addition to their original award,
What was it, 17 something?
yes.
And you said we have money budgeted for this, or we don't have money budgeted for this?
The funds were budgeted for the original award, presumably in 2007.
Is there money in the budget that we just passed for this?
In the current year budget, there is no funding for the additional $5,900 quote that we just recently received. So that would require funding in the form of either modifying the previously awarded contract, or to come up with $5,900 in some other fashion.
What fashion would that be?
Well, at this time of the year, the standard way would be to do codification is a project together with a few selected items like master plans, where a special authorization for a 5-year funding mechanism is available. So it's referred to as a special emergency. And we use the word emergency because that's the way the statute refers to it. But that provides for basically a payoff over 5 years for this. So that in each of the next 5 subsequent budgets, we would be funding the 1/5 portion.
Right, because we're also doing, a couple meetings ago, we talked about doing some road work to clear up the intersection, and that wasn't budgeted, it was taken out of the budget. So if we keep finding money, that means other things aren't going to get done. So we would have to do a special emergency for whatever this amount is?
That's correct.
Okay.
We even, our book is so updated, we have fees in there.
Oh, I think we all agree we need to do it. I just want to know where the money's going to come from.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing, I think we need to do it sooner rather than later.
It's got to be done.
Well, especially if we're this far behind 2008, that's 7 years worth of ordinances that we don't have online or in printed form that we can reference. And I would rather have that taken care of so we have an accurate reference and we don't start readopting things that were addressed 7 years ago that we're not aware of.
So we have to draft this special emergency funding ordinance because the first step is the $5,900, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, it's more than $5,900, isn't it?
Yeah, but the other stuff is budgeted.
We have 18.
Okay, fine.
With the council's approval, then we'll draft the necessary, I think it's actually an emergency is done by an ordinance, so we'll have that available to next week.
Can I ask, to Chris's point, we're through to 2008 approved on here. How much is done of what this, because this looks like it's closing a window from 08 to 2015, right?
Right.
Are they done up to this October 31st, 2008 yet?
There were steps taken to review and start to make notes and make updates, and to be honest, I think it almost would be, there's so much time lapsed, and I wasn't involved in any of that, to almost be starting from the beginning.
Well, that's what I was going to say. At Chris's point, at this point, we're in August. 4 more months, we're in a new year. Can we wait to budget this for next year?
I don't think that they're anywhere near to being close to 2008.
No, exactly.
So would it be reasonable to say we'll leave this to next year's
If
budget?
you leave it to next year, I think you're making the same mistake that's been made
Okay.
for years, and that is kicking the can down the road. And now you're 8 years down the road with the can, and the code book is so outdated, we're charging Joe's time away for $10, for work that's got to be worth more than that.
Very good.
Yeah, and also, it should be noted that the original codification project back in 2007 was essentially a rewrite of the entire ordinance, a review of every chapter and providing updates. So it was not simply a matter of incorporating previously adopted ordinances into the code, but it was a total rewrite.
Well, that's why I had asked about not to kick the can to next year, but if there are 4 to 6 months of active work on what's here without approving this additional, can we approve the additional next year while they're working during this time, they're not at a standstill waiting for this additional approval to continue from 2008 to 2015. I'm just throwing that out there as an option.
Is it an option? Absolutely. But practically speaking, the codification, and I use the term codification, but it's really a total revision of all of the existing ordinances that are on the books, is much more than a 4 or 5 month project. And it's frankly what bogged the process down was that typically a recodification is a 1 year to 18 month project. And during that initial step, there were changes in personnel, and I think it predates pretty much everyone as to the circumstances surrounding the delay. But now we're looking at simply working on codifying the ordinances that have been adopted since then, and then subsequently go back and look at the bigger project.
Thank you.
Well, I will say this, when I came on council in 2010, I was on council for, I believe it was a year, with Kat Crippen, who was in attendance here tonight, and she had been trying, matter of fact, she did most of the codification changes prior to me coming on council, and we tried to get something passed at that particular time to bring the book up to date. Kat, could you just come forward and just kind of add a little bit to this?
Yes. When I was on council in 2008, I was the legislations and grant person, and the recodification was broached as a topic at that time because the code book was so vastly out of date. And we did do the 5-year emergency appropriation then, and that's the money that's still set aside. So doing a recodification, and I know Councilman Vorbach had a question on this that I don't think was answered properly, it doesn't mean that coded systems rewrites your code. What it means is the coded system goes through your existing code, they find ordinances that are obsolete, they find ones that are just out of date, they're out of sync with the state statute. Maybe there's a state statute governing something like taxi ordinances, and the municipality has to have an ordinance to match the statute. If the statute changes, you have to change your ordinance to update it to keep everything in sync. So coded systems doesn't truly rewrite your ordinances. They go through, they find all of the places where you're out of sync, you're obsolete, whatever, they mark it up. And then everybody on the council gets to do the hard part because you have to read it. And that was the thing that was just massive. By the time I left council in December of 2010, Fred Raffetto and Teresa and I and Coded Systems had worked through the first 3 chapters of the book. They were done, and so they should be someplace, Gary, if you want to go back and revisit that. Fred had vetted everything. All of the suggested proposed changes were in there, and they were ready to go. So somebody would have had to sit down and read those. Now, I wasn't on council, so whoever became legislation and grants should have picked that project up and carried it forward for, the next couple of years and kept it going. So, Coded Systems would love to have finished this project 5 years ago, however many years. Coded Systems is not at fault here. So they've been trying to get this done. They've wanted to get it done, but barring somebody on the council picking this up with the clerk, with the attorney, and moving the whole project forward, it just bogged down, and it never got done. Then to compound that, the council has passed ordinances in the meantime. So you have an old, outdated code book, but now you have X number of years of new ordinances on top of that that have to be fitted in. They have to be numbered, they have to be put in the right chapter, they have to go in the right place. So you've now got a much bigger package going on. So yeah, I would definitely urge you to address this sooner than later, because this is something that really has been a long time coming, and you can't let it languish. I mean, you still have ordinances on there from 1927. Really? You need to regulate oyster peddlers? You guys, you got
in there?
It is. I tried to get it out, but
You don't have a problem with oyster peddlers because we have a good ordinance, right?
And the other thing, which is much more serious, is that every job that this borough has must, by statute, must be created by ordinance. I don't know how many of you up there know this, but we have no Department of Public Works. There is no Department of Public Works. There's nobody that works for Public Works, there is no department, because you have a police chapter, you have a really outdated fire chapter.
It's embarrassingly outdated.
Like embarrassingly outdated. You have no chapter. So when Mr. Forbach and Mr. Brennan went around to get a petition signed to take Mr. Herner's raise away from him, they didn't have to. If they understood case law, they would have realized there's already case law that says if you don't have the public works job created by ordinance, you don't have to oblige the contract. So they went to a lot of work for nothing because they could have just said no and it would have stood. So anyway, you got to clean house. This has been since 2008. You really got to do it because someday you have ordinances that are unconstitutional. We have an ordinance that says you can only have one flagpole and you can only fly either the U.S. flag or the flag of Spring Lake Heights. Now, that's a First Amendment violation, and I don't think anybody wants to go down the First Amendment liability road, but drive around town. Who enforces that? Really? Everybody's got a Chinese flag, a Jets flag, an Irish flag, all these flags. So you have laws in there that nobody is adhering to.
Is that something that we discover when we read them, or does coded systems bring those down?
No, they bring that to your attention.
So if there's something that was challenged in another area in a court case and defeated, they would bring it to our
The
attention?
vacancy ordinance.
So Gary, how do we move forward?
Well, I imagine.
We understand the issue.
Right. Jay's going to prepare an ordinance. He's going to have it ready to introduce next meeting. I think
Okay.
he said, so that's the way to proceed.
Great. Thank you.
And in the meantime,
Thanks for having that, Kat.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks, Pat. In the meantime, I think we all concur here on the dais that we're going to move forward with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we get another council in.
Yeah, because they'll forget.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Mayor and council reports. Mr. Campion?
I have one simple thing. We had an issue at Ocean Road at the toilets over there with a break, and apparently it was flowing for a while until Mr. Schuler happened to be driving down, and I just want to thank Joe and his guys for getting out there so quick on a Sunday to take care of the water that was rushing down the street. But just a general notice, if you happen to see things like that, please make a phone call and make us aware that something is abnormal, especially on a Sunday at the parks. If you see a broken faucet or you see water dumping that shouldn't be there, it only takes a few minutes to make a phone call, because that water that gets wasted, we're all paying for it through tax dollars. So it's very helpful if people who are active at the park see that and can make that phone call to help us out.
And along with that, as I was pulling in to check it out, a guy come off the tennis court, the water's running down through there, he gets in his car and drives off. I mean, it was pouring out. He didn't seem to care because it wasn't on the tennis court.
But a big thanks to Kevin and Steve came out real quick, or Chris came out real quick.
I'm pretty certain that had it been on the tennis court, we would have heard about it.
Would have heard about it.
Or the basketball.
Or the basketball.
Mr. Dingman?
Yes, recreation, we are starting a new soccer partnership with Manasquan Soccer. Notices went out, I guess an email went out to everybody about a week ago. With registration is in full swing, so you can register. The new partnership allows us, I think it allows us to make some improvements that we've been trying to make. Number one, on the organizational side, Manasquan Soccer already has a functioning soccer league. They have a well-oiled machine in terms of getting information out to parents in a timely manner. And they also run their soccer groupings in a more developmentally appropriate way. What I mean by that is they'll run 2 grade levels together instead of 3. And in prior years, we've been in situations where we've partnered with with other groups, and we've had to have soccer games where you've had 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders on the team, where there is quite a difference between a 2nd grader and a 4th grader. And so now we've been able to generate a new partnership with Manasquan, get more developmentally appropriate teams. I think we're going to have a better level of organization and communication with parents, and I think that's something that parents want. For this year, because our fields are going to be under construction, we will be playing some games at the Seagirt facility, which is where Manasquan plays, so we'll always be playing games there. And some of the middle school kids may be playing games in Avon and some of the other towns in which the league works. Okay, but I think this is a good move for us going forward. I think it's going to bring us more organization and more developmentally appropriate soccer for our kids. The kindergarten and first graders will still have clinic like they always have. We're going to continue to do that. That's going to be run by an outside soccer clinic group, so that's not going to change. We've already deemed that to be a high level of service, and we're going to continue that. So stay tuned. Registration is in process, and I'm sure you'll hear more about it. Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Schuler?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, and I don't have anything either. Reports, notices, and correspondence. Has everyone read through all that? Okay. And we have an ordinance to introduce.
Mr. Divers,
Oh,
do we need to
yes.
motion to adjust the agenda to add that ordinance?
We have two ordinances to introduce.
I think we just introduced the ordinance will be sufficient.
Okay, the first one here is ordinance number 2015-07. Janine, would you read that, please?
Ordinance number 2015-07, an ordinance amending and supplementing section 7-6.3 entitled Yield Intersections of Chapter 7 Traffic of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Spring Lake Heights, New Jersey.
Certainly.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, Janine.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Motion passes. So we will have a scheduled public hearing on that on September 14th.
Okay, now on the second ordinance that we're going to introduce, 2015-08, do you have any of that language there, Janine?
Can we use the language that was in our packet?
So the language is in the letter.
Ordinance amending chapter 22.
Dated July 21, 2014.
I have that if you want.
Right, it's in everybody's packet.
Here's
And then you would just need to note where it's going to be inserted, which is in the middle of the
chapter 22.
A1. It's 22-606.1, A1. After the word, it's like the second full sentence after the words flood zones. I think that's where the language is supposed to be inserted, correct? Everybody agrees with that?
Yes.
Yes.
So it would essentially be an ordinance amending chapter 22, municipal land use regulations to provide for residential building heights and flood zones,
Correct.
and just adding that language in.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Would
say.
you want to read that language out loud?
Yeah, would you please?
Okay. The maximum, I'm sorry, you didn't, Mr. Maximum building height for principal structures in flood insurance rate map firm flood zones in order to achieve a maximum 3-foot separation of finished floor from the applicable base flood elevation shall be 37 feet.
Okay, motion and second.
Make that motion.
Roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
I think given the changes that they're making to rec fund, and I think we should give these homeowners the maximum flexibility and not change the ordinance. No.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. McLean, so did we take Councilwoman King's vote?
No, not at this point, she's not.
Okay, so motion passes. We will have a public hearing on that September 14th as well.
Yes.
Okay, resolutions. Resolution 2015-138, fire company membership for Allison McCabe and Ashley Bauer. Can I have a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 2015-139, request to closure of a portion of Railroad Avenue between Ocean Road and Prospect Avenue. Can I have a motion and a second?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
I'm sorry, what are the dates in this? Or do we have a specific date? September 6th, right?
Yes.
There's a letter on the back end.
Okay, yes.
Mr.
I'll put
Schuler?
that.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 2015-140, approving payment of claims on the August 13th, 2015 bill list. Motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Everything except Realty Data Systems.
Okay, now we come to the second.
Hang on. So,
That would be a no,
Okay, I can't take a line item on that?
Judy. I think you've expressed your objection to the particular line item. It would either have to be yes or no to the whole.
Oh, to the
so
whole
then it
deal?
would be no to the whole bill list.
Okay.
Motion passes.
I thought you can take out specific.
Well, if we were going to separate
Purchases.
out the different line items.
Okay, you're taking it as a consent agenda, I got it, all right.
Okay, now we're coming to the second public comment, and you can talk about any item whatsoever.
Boy.
Rich Liver, 10 Nadine Drive, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, Anthony Moscato, 17 Linden Drive, Spring Lake Heights. Fairway Views. I was here on July 13, and often many people come to either complain or condemn something. I'm here to compliment. I was here and I had reported that there were derelict cars on Park and 9th, and I was representing as a real estate broker, Mrs. Harding. I want to publicly thank Neil Hamilton. Got rid of the cars. We procured a buyer. Everyone is happy.
Very good.
I want to thank
Very good.
for your time. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thanks for coming.
We will express that to him.
Evening, everyone. Nate Novak, 907 Keith. I just had a quick question. We were talking about this data entry into the old code book. I'm just wondering how that reflects onto actually updating fees and stuff and how that correlates. It seems like we could do that without updating the whole code book. So,
Every time you actually would change something in the code book, you'd have to do a separate amendment. So it's much more economical and feasible to just do it all at once. And you're bringing the entire code up to date and adding things that we don't have. So,
I mean, is there a few glaring things that we need to do? Like, I know Joe May's $10 here.
you're talking about not having really updated the book in 7 or 8 years. So there's a substantial number of things that need to be brought up to date.
And was there a specific moment where that stopped? Like, was there one key moment where the plan?
I don't think anybody here was on the council at that point when things stopped.
Because it does sound like, I mean, there's money that was budgeted for it, somebody started the process.
Sounds like almost Pat said, it slipped through in a transition.
But we had it,
Just dropped.
it's just like different there, different.
Right.
That is what you said, it was very worked on it, but
I think, to be honest with you, Nate, it's a project that is so monumental that it's a good possibility. It kind of got lost in the shuffle with people changing and,
Sure.
not anyone here for a longer period of time.
It's a commitment.
But I know Janine has, decided this is, something she really wants to take a
No, I
task
applaud her
at,
for that.
and try to see if she can get it moving
once
along.
we get that updated, then doing it every year isn't quite so much.
Sure.
It isn't so
No, then
quite.
you just on maintenance.
Right.
I think it's also been helpful that Gary keeps on reminding us that it needs.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken,
Now you're looking at it.
Jay, I got a question for you. Once this thing is,
Thank you.
thanks,
Thanks,
Nate. Once this thing is updated, can't we put something in the budget every year to do
There are actually, in each year's budget request, there is a small amount of funds that are requested to provide for ongoing maintenance. It's built into the budget. The bigger issue was that the annual updates came to a halt because the entire project was going to be, or the entire project was to rewrite the entire code. So yes, that is the correct way to do it, and it has been planned.
Gee, you didn't go home yet?
Rich Giver, 1080 Drive, yet again. What I would stress in terms of the code book is that you may be able to access everything online, but it's not up to date.
Yeah, it's not up to date.
And that's a problem. And
Right.
each year that we don't update it, we can actually be challenged on the things we passed because it's not publicly noted. So someone can actually, you can have something in the code book that you passed 2 years ago, but if it's not updated, someone can come in here and take you to court and they will win, especially if you made a specific change. So I would urge you to do it. And if there's money every year in the budget, shouldn't you be able to find this $5,900? Because we didn't spend that money over the last.
This is still
Exactly. The funds do
Easy
not.
come, easy
I'm
go.
just trying to look.
I think you just put a loophole in tonight's resolution.
I don't know about that.
Anyone else?
Shouldn't have made that public.
Okay, can I have a motion and a second to close the public comment section?
We've got a motion.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. A motion and a second to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Nobody jumps on the set to close.